le 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 le, loa loa wene, ale le le le, ale le le le, loa loa wene, ane a, ane a.
Very long ago, before the human race, the animal people were plentiful. One day, a spirit from the islands in the west was looking around. The spirit was admiring the beautiful ocean. The spirit saw in it many different peoples, such as the whale people, fish people, the starfish people, and even the abalone people, who were sometimes hiding under big rocks. The spirit came across the dolphin people, swimming and playing, and thought how good it would be to be dolphin. So the spirit turned into dolphin for a time. Soon the spirit fell in love with a dolphin. They had 2 children. The first was dolphin, but the second was from the human race. And that's when the first human was born, from the dolphin. And the first human was woman. The dolphins raised their children together. The woman learned to protect and help raise the young children. When the woman learned all of the lessons of the dolphin people, she was taken to the shores of the Santa Cruz Island to live. One day, another spirit was roaming around the ocean. The spirit saw shark and fell in love instantly. The spirit decided to turn into shark for a time. Soon the shark had 2 children. The first was shark. The second was from the human race, man. The shark taught their children to hunt and move swiftly through the water. That is why man is the hunter. When the man had learned all the lessons of the shark people, he was taken to the shores of the Santa Cruz Island to live. The man and the woman met and became the island people, or how we are known now, the Chumash.
Loa wene, ale le le le, ale le le le, loa loa wene, ale le le le.
Ayukui Skoyenakoi, Neck now, may we swin chuck, Monique Sonoquie, wet mom, wet mep, Metwa Metlok. I think I need some water. Tungva, Esi Chumash, Esi Yaqui, Esi Zapotec, Esi Irish. Irish are very important in seaweed gathering, so always put that in there. Neres Yurak, and I am the moderator for today. I had that up there to kind of like fill in time to let people come in and sit down, but how many noticed what the woman in that video was wearing? She's wearing a seaweed skirt. That's how we started out with on the islands. And I'm going to do a little slideshow just to introduce our panel, the Indigenous panel. And there we go. Okay, I don't need to move. Lovely. So this is just an image of some traditional foods. And I do camps with Native youth. And this is from one of our camps. And I called this the Chumash Fear Factor. And so they had to like taste seaweed. Of course, none of them had ever tasted seaweed before. Seaweed, crickets, acorn flour, and some berries. And so just that kind of fun stuff to do. Oh, I've got the clicker. Okay, so we'll go with that. You want to show the video? Can you show the video? Okay, in just 1 minute. I'm originally from Santa Barbara, and the video you saw earlier, the beginning of the Chumash, is a story that was passed down from one of our elders to me. So we put it to video and try to just introduce, especially our youth, to our traditional songs. We have a book, and there's language in the book, but I'm not a language speaker, so I didn't put that in the video. But just to introduce a lot of things. One that we've been here since time immemorial. We were here with the dinosaurs. We're still here now, and how seaweed is really a part of our culture. So that's in what they call now the Channel Islands. And when we lived on the Channel Islands, we didn't have a lot of the plants that we have here on the mainland. So everything we did was out of seaweed, a lot of sea grasses. And that's from our clothing, our houses, the mats we laid on, our baskets, as well as eating seaweed. So that's another really important reason why I wanted to show that video to you. And I'm going to ask my panelists to come and sit down, please, in a minute. Okay, yeah, come on and sit down. I had a big, long PowerPoint for you, too, so I don't know if we'll rectify that. Is a mic on in the middle? So traditionally, all the coastal people, we gathered seaweed and we traded seaweed. So having an Indigenous panel here is really significant, too, when we're talking about seaweed, because we're still gathering seaweed and kelps and that stuff. So our first speaker is Dan Rodriguez, and I'm going to let him introduce himself because he's got a long line of work that he does, and I can't keep up with him. Okay, lovely. Stan?
Hoka ipenyamati pecham. Stamanya choinya makupai with konanya iwanar. The pompera hilikoinya waywayopenya alkanap. Mamble mara nyab hasil awake pesho nya hayak pesho. Puknachet map me your weight your wife who's lava paying your pum. Your way one put your ma high. Bill, your way for you be. You mat you han. You mat qua han. You mat a han. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stan Rodriguez. I'm from the Ipai Nation of San Isabel. Many of you know where that's at, right? And where are we at? In the mountains. By Julian. But that wasn't always the case. Our people have village sites all up and down the coast. The ocean was very important for our people. And our creation stories, which in our stories take 4 days to tell in its entirety, it talks about our relationship with the ocean, what it means to us, what we get out of it, and what we return into the ocean. Our people have had a symbiotic relationship with the coast since time immemorial. When we talk about seaweed, we talk about this whole ecosystem. It would share with us, and we would share with the coast. We would share with the ocean. And as my friend Monique said, on the islands where her people would go to, they would use seaweed. Our people are also a people of the islands too. From the Coronado Islands, you see Dana Point, all of these islands, even farther out, our people would travel to them. We would make hakuayo, tule boats. How many of you ever seen a tule boat? Any of you? How many of you ever been on a tule boat? Okay, 2 of them waiting for her to get in next. Yeah. And these tule boats we would make from natural materials, and they would last for years. Spaniards, when they were coming through, would say they seen crazy Indians hunting whales on grass boats. We're not crazy. We just know what we're doing. It's a native culture, native epistemology that we have. It stems from thousands upon thousands of years. How many of you scuba dive? Any of you? Few of you. We have village sites that are under the Pacific Ocean. It speaks to a time when our people had the water was farther back. We have fish trap sites in the desert. We are no strangers to climate change. We know these things, and we pass them on. The problem has been disruption of our culture, where our culture, we've been pushed farther and farther into the mountains. And now, many of you are tribal members from some of the reservations. How many of you go to the coast? How many of you go to the ocean regularly? No? No? It's not your fault. It's not your fault why that happened. But what we're doing now is we're changing that narrative. We're creating opportunities for our tribal members to come to the coast, to come to the ocean, to harvest, to learn about it, to learn our relationship with the coast. It's so important. This past week on Monday, a number of you were there over at Scripps Pier. Went doing some filming. You did a lot of filming, Samir. You were out there. And one of the things that we also found was seaweed. Seaweed that we can use to eat. It's the first time we've harvested in many, many years. So this was an incredible moment for our people. As we relearn about the ocean and our place, we revitalize that knowledge. More knowledge comes in. Our people have been cut in half by the Mexican border. Half of our nation is in Baja. So a lot of the knowledge that had gone dormant here, people still used it. When they would come down from San Jose de la Zora or Maperhau to La Misión to gather salt, to gather mussels, to gather seaweed, all these things, to fish. And they would also make tule boats. However, due to encroachment, due to real estate and the creation of hotels and apartments and things, condos, access to the ocean is now getting more and more difficult. One of the things that we've also noticed is the state of the ocean now. With the rise in sea temperature, the kelp, which used to be a kelp forest that would go across the state past California, has been injured. It is struggling. When you see a lack of balance in the ocean, it's telling you something is wrong. Mayum yaway so, which yo, ya cha nip ja han. Mohe. Pugnaje, which yo, which that was. You put mumbling around. How many of you understood what I said? That's what I thought. Okay. I will change from talking American or American Indian, Kumeyaay, to English. We see an abundance, an overabundance of sea urchins. How many of you ever eaten sea urchins? How many of you like it? I like how you did it. I don't know, Stan. You know, they're very good to eat. But there's a lot out there now. So that's speaking to an imbalance that's in the ocean. What are we going to do to change that narrative? What can we do to find balance? Because if we take care of the ocean, if we take care of that ecosystem, it will take care of us. Where does most of the oxygen come from? Where? Say it. Where's that at? In the ocean. We get most of our oxygen from the ocean. But if we continue to harm it, we're all going to suffer. So, I'm speaking from Kumeyaay Community College. We are the only operational tribal college in California that offers an accredited associate's. And we're working on developing an accredited bachelor's program in Kumeyaay studies with an emphasis in climate science. Maybe some of you might be interested. Come on down to KFC. Take some classes with us. We learn. If we all work together, we can help to repair what has happened. But we have to be open. Have to learn how to do things differently. Because the way it's been done in the past has been purely out of greed, to take and take and take. And that's not our way. Before I shut my snoot and pass it on to my colleagues over here, I just wanted to say that for our people to come to the coast, to reconnect with the islands, with the ocean, our people, is very important for us. This area here is our holy land. You hear in the Bible, they talk about Jerusalem. What's it? This is our holy land here. This is in our creation story. It tells us about this land. And we wish to honor that land. We wish to take care of it because we are part of it. Nature. Western views of nature is everything else except for humans. In our native way, we are part of that. And only if we all work together can we make change happen. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I got my PowerPoint up. So we're going to do that, okay, really quick. So here's some images of seaweed gathering that we do. And different communities gather different ways and dry different ways. So like the center one in the middle is a picture from gathering with Yuroks, and they make patties out of them and dry them. So they're easy to transport. They're easy to eat. I like to make little tiny patties because I give away a lot of the seaweed. And then to the right is a seaweed basket that my friend has made, and so that's my seaweed that I gathered. And then there's some youth. We take a lot of youth out when I was up on the Yurok reservation. So Stan talked about the islands and our people, and so as you saw in the video, Chumash, we came from the islands, and so they call the Santa Cruz Island Limu, which they've translated as in the sea in Chumash, but it's also a Hawaiian word, Limu, and it means seaweed, which makes a lot of sense. So that was like the first indication, like, oh yeah, they were coming over here a lot, and I don't know if we made it over there in our Tamols, but they certainly made it out here. And then on San Nicolas Island, has anybody ever heard of the book about the lone woman from? Okay, so this is a picture of her, and they've got a drawing of her living in a seaweed house made out of whale bones, and there's a lot of documentation about that her clothes are made out of seagrass. So this is from the Antelope Valley Museum. The surf grass, and she's got a dress, and they've got in their collections a cap. So everything that she would use was made out of surf grass there. Just more proof, right? And then this is one of my baskets out of seagrass. And then this is I search online at a lot of auction houses to find baskets, as well as archives in museums. And so this is an image of a Chumash basket, and I would use that to gather seaweed. And then here's some contemporary baskets. The one on the left was made by my friend Luana Quitiquit, and it's about 4 feet wide. And the one in the middle was made from one of my basket teachers, Debbie McConnell. She's Hoopa, and that's a small basket used to gather and to dip in the water to rinse off your seaweed. And on top is from an archive, and then at the bottom is what a lot of tribes use now. Those are Home Depot buckets to gather, and then you fill them up with your seaweed, and then you have a one that's filled with water, and then you're dipping it in there to clean off. So we've adapted. And then this is some of my artwork that I do out of kelp and seaweeds and seagrasses. And then just, basic gathering. Who has gathered seaweed out on the ocean? Cool. So there's a lot of little tricks, and my favorite one is this is the best seaweed right here after a tide, because it's usually really clean. It doesn't have a lot of rocks on it or sand, doesn't have any bugs on it, so you can pretty much get that and just eat it. And then talking about sustainable harvest practices, we're here because we do not have sustainable harvest practices as a society. But traditionally we did. And so the food, we ate it fresh, we pattied it, we powdered it in strips, we dehydrated it, we baked it, we fried it. Pomos like to fry their seaweed and eat it with tortillas or fry bread. You wrap it for baking and steaming fish, or we mix it with acorn mush, we put it in soups. We drink it in hot tea and cold tea. And those are all the ways that I do it. I'm sure there's more, but that's how I do it. And then for medicine, for iodine, for skin, as a scrub, Turkish cloth. Do you guys know Turkish cloth? Anybody ever use that on their skin? It's lovely, okay? And it's one of my favorite seaweeds to eat. You can only eat it fresh on the water, but it's kind of sweet. Poultice or wrap on the body for pain, burns, sores, ingested for stomach issues, to draw out sickness, sore throats, etc. And then ceremony. So we use seaweed for fasting, or I usually use it when I come out of a fast. That's the first thing I ingest. We have seaweed songs, seaweed dances, and our regalia was made out of seaweed. And then utilitarian, baskets, skirts, houses, caps. A lot of us wore basket caps, capes, musical instruments. Have you ever seen a bullhead rattle? Is that from down here too? Yeah. It's a Southern California thing. They don't have it up in Northern California. Rope, fertilizer. Does anybody put seaweed in their fertilizer? Do you buy it or do you gather it? Okay. That's my favorite thing. So I make my baskets, and the leftover, I'm either eating it or it's going into, the dog likes to chew on it, and my nephew, he teethed on it. So on bullhead kelp. And then, so babies teething and dogs. So it's really healthy for everybody. And then the latest thing, this is a fry bread. Has anybody eaten a Native American taco, Indian taco? So it's not the healthiest thing, but this one was made with coconut flour. And and it was kind of a combination of what people brought to the event. So not a typical Native American Indian taco, right? We used avocado, and somebody donated buffalo meat. So we did buffalo meat and tomatoes from the garden, and then on top is seaweed. So it's the first time I put seaweed on my fried bread taco. It was amazing. And then deep fried seaweed, and then edible flowers. So really incorporating it back into our foods. And then talking about interdependence with other, not just with different tribes trading, but also eating, and with other foods in the ocean, with fish, the salt. So they're all interdependent. So if something happens to one thing, like the sea urchins, right, then something's going to happen to the kelp, and then something's going to happen to the otters. So knowing where that is. It's hard to find salt these days on the ocean. Lots of times I get it off of my kelp and I scrape it. But finding it on rocks is hard to do now, because we also don't have access, because and it's also polluted. So there's a lot of reasons why we can't go gather our seaweed, finding a safe place to do it. And then there's been a lot of resistance. Several years ago, the Marine Life Protection Act came out, and they wanted to limit native access to seaweed. And the standard was the pomos were only allowed 10 pounds of wet seaweed to gather. So there's an image of us at one of the MLPA meetings, and that's mostly the Yurok, Kupa, Karuk tribes that are there. And then the Yuroks have done a lot of research around seaweed and their seaweed harvests. Oh, I thought I had another picture in there. So right after they called the MLPA, we're going to do this MLPA, and we want to limit you. Well, they didn't say that, but I knew that the pomos only get 10 pounds. I went out and I gathered seaweed and weighed it, and it was only about this much, the 10 pounds, which is not enough for me, because we take it to ceremony, and when you take it to ceremony, you feed everybody. And if somebody's sick, you give them seaweed, and then whenever you visit an elder, you take them seaweed. So so there's a lot of, so we wrote letters saying that I need at least 100 pounds of dry seaweed for the year. Oh, and so this is the new Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, and the Northern Chumash Council have spearheaded this for several years now, and it's finally moving forward. So that's something to follow online. They just, unfortunately, their petition ended like October 25th. But so keep your eye out for that. Write down or take pictures of these organizations, because they're doing great things. There is a video, but we will show that if we have time. And then this is the Yurok tribes. Rezagini and some other tribes are also doing a sanctuary, a national marine sanctuary up in Northern California in the Humboldt area. And Rezagini Rancheria, they also do an ocean camp for their youth. And then the Pomos, I'm just trying to give you a little introduction of what's going on in Indian country. Pomos have, there's a group called the Sinkyone Wilderness Council, and it's got like 10 or 15 Pomo tribes that are signed on to that, and they've got land in the forest, and now they have land on the ocean. And they pushed the Fish and Wildlife to do they were asking for a 10-year moratorium on bullhead kelp harvesting. Because, again, I pick just what's on the beach for what I use. But I didn't know this, but you could rent a section of the ocean of a kelp bed, and you could do whatever you want to do to get that up. So a lot of people scrape, and a lot of people scrape off the rocks too. And we know if you scrape off the rocks, you take the roots, and it's not going to come back. So that happens to a lot of seaweed sites. So they were pushing Fish and Game to do a 10-year moratorium. Fish and Game did a 3-year moratorium. But not a lot of people know about that. So this is like the first one. And I've asked them, are you going to ask for more seaweeds, more kelps? So they're working on that. So that's really important work. And this is another organization, North Coast Native Protectors. And they work with a lot of different tribes on bringing different issues to the forefront, especially around the ocean. And there's Stan. We saw Stan. You're talking about Thule boats. There's him on a Thule boat. And then I'm going to introduce next Coastal Defenders, and Coach Jackson, and she's going to introduce her speakers and what they do as an organization. Monique.
Is this okay? Halka. Hey, Owen, it's at Warshanani Coach Jackson. My name is Coach Jackson. I'm the founder of Coastal Defenders. We're an environmental, social, and restorative justice organization dedicated to creating equitable pathways in STEAM, aquatics, and environmental stewardship. We have some of our students here today from Indigenous Leadership Youth, which the acronym is ILLI. I don't know about you all, but I think the world needs more love, not less. So ILLI also means I love you. We're working on it. We haven't gotten there yet with every single person, but we're working on how we say I love you to ourselves, I love you to each other, and I love you to the planet, because I think we talk a lot about loving and protecting the planet, but we don't talk a lot about loving and protecting each other, and it's all intertwined. If you're anyone from ILLI, do you want to raise your hand here today? Or not? They're here, I promise. So my background is actually in military and athletics, but I'm a hippie and an educator. So to that end, I also have a couple helpers here today with me. Do you want to come up here? Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself? Do you want to say your name?
My name's Sienna, and I kind of work at the Kumeyaay College, but my mom works at the Kumeyaay College, but I just come along and do some of the things and just help out.
Hello, I'm Audrey.
That was completely unplanned, by the way, so that's why we're clapping them up. These are helpers that were at the beach with us. So one of the things we do in terms of creating equitable pathways, one of the many hats that I wear is a docent at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. We also work with the Jen Smith Lab, who, if any of you are at the Speakeasy last evening, I'm sure you met her. They have an awesome project. The acronym is TIDES, Tribal Intertidal Digital Ecological Surveys. I've been a volunteer on that program for about 3 years, and they were helping us do a lot of the surveying out there. It's really important that this has been a slow integration to this work. I introduced myself to you in my language, but I'm not from here. I'm from 3,000 miles away. I'm Nanticoke. So I'm only moving at the pace that Stan and Kumeyaay folks give me permission and protocols to, and we just all were in community together at the beach just this past Monday. And to that end, I would love to share with you another word in our language, Wanishi, W-A-N-I-S-H-I. It means gratitude. So I think, again, the world needs more love, and it's the short version of gratitude, but it means gratitude, it means love. Thank you for being here with us. So would you join me in saying Wanishi, especially to Stan and all the Kumeyaay people for being here today? Thank you. I started doing this as well because with Coastal Defenders, we have this thing called Waves of Love. And our bodies are mostly water. We come into this earth through water. 2 out of every 3 of our breaths-ish is from the ocean. So what we do, and it works for the littles, but let's see if it works for you all too. When someone's talking or we're listening, we send them waves of love, like this. You can also receive waves of love, like this. So isn't that beautiful? The world needs that right now, right? I'm a really big fan. My people are coastal people, right? So we've also been displaced, but we were only displaced about 15 minutes on the coast. Here in San Diego, there are 18 indigenous reservations in a county in the entire country, right? So about 10 years ago, when I came out here and first met Dr. Rodriguez, I talked to him and I said, I have these skill sets. My background is in water safety and protection. Our people have also been displaced on the coast. I really want to help. And Stan probably doesn't remember it, but he says the same thing to me every time. Awesome. Let's do it. I'll help you. I'll do it with you. So it's really beautiful to see here today that we have all this intergenerational help because we're all interconnected, and we're all interconnected in all our generations. I think that there's room and space for environmental protection conversations that are really complex, but there's also room and space for environmental protection conversations that are really basic. So since my people are coastal people, I grew up knowing the word for shell, which is esak. Esak. E-H-S-E-K would be the English version. But until I started doing this work, specifically getting back into oystering, I didn't know until 3 weeks ago that the name for this shell is Sesawenek esak. Sesawenek esak. So by coming back to the coast, it's helping me relearn my language, relearn my culture, and it's positioning me to be in a better role so I can make sure that all of these folks here on the panel and the land that we're all occupying get their harvest rights back. So I have helpers that are gonna maybe figure out a way to pass these all around and share the love of oysters. Just be careful, they're a little sharp. What's interesting about these oysters, you can start wherever you want and pass them around and then just let them pass them, okay? Good job. What's interesting about these oysters, they're from a local restaurant. Where would they go if they weren't here? Into the earth and not be used again? Has anyone ever heard of an oyster recycling program? We've got at least 2 people who have, but now we have like 50 people who have. Isn't that beautiful? So instead of these oyster shells going into the land, what can we do with them? And also another reason why I have the kids pass them out is because we tell the kids every oyster shell is unique, just like every human being is unique. So instead of these oyster shells just going into the landfill, here's what we have opportunities to do with them. 1, you can turn around and use oysters as bioindicators, right? They're filtrating out 50 gallons of water. If I have any marine bio people, feel free to pull me aside and quote me on those statistics later. We'll talk. But that's the general synopsis of being a biofiltrator. Thank you. They did such a great job, especially for me just texting their mom 2 minutes ago and asking them to come up here. You can take them, turn them into oyster reef balls. You can also help them mitigate sea level rise by creating an oyster wall. There's opportunities with clam gardens. We need more solutions, and we need more people a part of those solutions. To me, climate change, we need all hands on deck, and Indigenous people need to be leading these conversations. To that end, also want to say Wanishi outside of Monique for this opportunity. I see Nan Renner in the audience, Sami in the audience, Danny McCaskill in the audience, Geneva in the audience. And these folks define, to me, what it means to be on the allyship, because they're there day in and day out, getting dirty with us, harvesting with us, advocating for us in these institutional spaces. And I would just encourage everyone to leave here today with figuring out what that looks like. A second part of my job, really quickly, before I hand this over to our amazing advisor, Mr. Blaine Mazzetti. I also work with something called Tribal Marine Stewards Network. Has anyone heard of them? Okay, cool, we have now. So just look up online, Tribal Marine Stewards Network. It's 5 Indigenous nations, Tolowa, Resagini, Alma-Munson, Santa Ynez, and Kashaya. I was just up there spending a week in community with them. We're helping to reclaim a lot of these practices, and you can always reach out to them and figure out what support looks like. So lastly, I want to say thank you again to the students and to the folks who make this happen. Danny, you were one of them. I'm sure at some point Nan was on 17 email trails as well. Jen Smith's lab. And we really believe that the solutions moving forward are collaborative, right? Yes, they're Indigenous led, but we need everyone to be a part of it because the planet needs us. So thank you so much for letting us share a little bit about myself and the work. And I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Blaine Mazzetti, who ILI would not be possible without. Wanishi.
Mi notung Blaine Mazzetti, pi non payom koichum washangai. Hello, my name is Blaine Mazzetti. I'm payom koichum or Laseño, as you might have heard, from Rincon Indian Reservation in San Diego. So my family's been here since the beginning of time. Our story is here, just like Stan's family, right here, starting in the coast. We are a little bit north of here, in the Oceanside area, all the way to the mountains of Palomar, to Hemet, San Bernardino, San Juan Capistrano. That's all us. And these are my kids right here, and some right there, that are going to be the next Indigenous leaders for our community, hopefully working with some of you on the coast. And I'm just here to encourage you guys to please be open to Indigenous perspectives, learn the people whose land you occupy and work on, live on, go to the beach on. Recognize that, because to me the first step is raising awareness and acknowledgement of our people that have been here since the beginning of time. So I just want to say I thank all of you for coming out, and appreciate each and every one of you for being open to Indigenous perspectives, and Stan for always being there and helping us with knowledge, and Jules for including me in this awesome opportunity with these kids. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Do we have any questions? Yes.
I just want to say thank you for sharing. That was really awesome to sit and learn and hear from everyone.
Cool, thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Tribal Marine Stewards Network. It might be tribalmsn.org. And as funding continues, we hope that those talks can continue along with Kumeyaay folks, and we're just there to provide resources. Thank you. Tribal Marine Stewards Network, probably tribalmsn.org. Yeah, and we're there to provide resources and uplift the knowledge systems.
Yes. I'm not working on it. I live in Northern California now, but if you go to the Northern Chumash website, you'll find all that information. Yeah, they asked for a larger chunk of the protection, but of course it got shrunk down. You can still write letters to, different departments and stuff like that, just that the petition got closed down on their date, so they're still moving forward. It's not a done deal, but it's definitely something that, tribal communities are working forward on. And it was a small, non-federally recognized tribe that got this started. So when you're non-federally recognized, that means you don't get a lot of the perks that federally recognized communities do. And so most of us have started nonprofits. And maybe you can be state recognized, or you get a letter from the state or the mayor or the city council saying that you are the people of this territories. So for a small native nonprofit with, writing grants and just a few people left to do this type of work is really important. So collaboration is really important. So if you have a nonprofit or an organization, find out whose territory you're in and reach out. And it may not be an easy thing to reach out. It may take you years to find the right person. It's like when I started to work with the Sierra Club, and it took me a couple of years to find the right people in the Sierra Club that I could work with, or that were in that position, or that had time to do it. So it's the same thing with Native communities. You may call the office and not get a response. So you keep, going out and looking and asking. And we've had a lot of trauma and a lot of colonialization. So a lot of us are still really mad and have a chip on our shoulder and don't trust people. So it will take time to break down those barriers. It will take time. But if you're committed to this work, then you will do it. If you understand our trauma and the work that we do, we are so busy. I flew in for the day because I have another event next week I'm planning, and so I just came to fly in for the day. I've never done that, all jet setting. But Stan, had to go someplace else this morning, and and so we're all flying in. Coach Jackson flew in this morning, so we're all doing like 10 things each. So don't get discouraged, but definitely reach out, and maybe we could direct you someplace else. Yeah. Yes.
I'm glad you asked about the marine sanctuary. Is anyone familiar with marine protected areas, MPAs? I'm sure, right? There's also an Indigenous protected area that dedication is coming up, I think, on December 6th. So that's something definitely we all share a passion for, is also taking back co-management and stewardship. To that end, if anyone is like action oriented, like you want to leave here and you're super inspired in terms of support, you can always write like a letter to Fish and Game Commission. You can always send a letter to the California Department of Natural Resources, and you can advocate for Indigenous representation, specifically in MPAs. You can advocate for traditional harvest and take. You can look, if any of the readers, the science people, I'm looking at Danny, the smarty pants that are out here, if you want to read a document, you can read the DMR, the MPA DMR. It's a decadal management review. So I worked on the back end of the tribal summary for 2 years, but I don't like saying it because, one, my people are not from here. So when I got contracted out to try to engage with communities, let's say I asked like 40 Indigenous folks what their roles of MPAs, 39 of them had never heard of it. Well, that doesn't really mean anything because MPAs came here and landed on their land, right? And that's only in like the last 30 years. So they really need you all to like leave here and pick up the phone, write a letter, and advocate for funding as well and resources, which, by the way, if anyone has a bus, let us know, because Blaine and I every day go through chaos trying to get the kids here. But funding and resources, because the state needs to hire all Indigenous folks to bring them back to the coast, because when you go and try, we say, yeah, go and try to reach out to your local Indigenous nation. What does that mean? It's not like there's not a coach at every organization fielding phone calls and saying, yeah, we can help you with stuff, right? I wish there was, but someone's got to make that happen. And so a lot of times I was one of the only Indigenous people in the room, probably because of my privilege, to be straight up honest with you, and they think that I'm like the safe native, and then they find out I'm a 007 and it's the complete opposite, and they're like, what the heck did we do? But you know, I shouldn't be the person. There were only like 7 of us worked on the tribal summary for 2 years. So again, when they say there was like one native person who knew what MPA was, he was like, yeah, I know it, I protested it. And so we have to like the reason why we're in these situations, right, is due to colonization. So we got to be really cognizant about positioning ourselves as the people to fix the colonization on top of it, and experts. And we got to be really cognizant when you look at all these tables, especially coming from a week with Indigenous folks. It was a little bit shocking to come in here because you see abalone out there, right? There's shells out there, and people kind of have this thing where they can just go and take, right? And we can't really go and take. One, it's not good for the planet. But there's permissions and protocols there for a reason. And it's really ironic that everyone thinks they can go out there and take, but then the Indigenous people don't even have their rights established to have their traditional take and harvest. Like, I shouldn't be 42 years old just learning that an oyster shell is Sesawenic Esok, but we were taken from the land, and so now we've got to come back. So that was like a lot of stuff all over the place. Maybe one thing, it's like spaghetti, maybe something stuck to the wall there. Obviously, I would love to have side conversations. Come check out our table at Coastal Defenders, which, by the way, we don't have all the fancy stuff. It's Blaine and I running it from the goodness of our hearts. So everything on that table is from my house, right? And then we have our tablecloth, which Sean Dean made from a curtain in her house, and she got some Velcro from like her shoes or something and put it together. So we do need help and support if you want to like help us at our tables. But in general, please write a letter to Fish and Game Commission, CNNRA, and say, hey, you need to start funding Indigenous folks to do this work.
Also, too, part of that is inclusion. You know, if you're on a committee someplace, I don't, if it could be the Board of Supervisors, could be any kind of committee, you know, ask where's the Indigenous representation and push for it and stand your ground. Stand your ground. Try to find somebody to fill that, but stand your ground, because that's really important, because our voices aren't heard, and if we're not at the table, it's not happening. That's just it. Nobody's going to represent us but ourselves. And that's another thing, too, is representation. One of the big things that we have going on now is like misappropriation of Indigenous culture. You know, has anybody ever been to Bioneers? Bioneers, it's a big environmental conference. It's beautiful, it's great. And they've had some really good Native presenters up there. But every time, you know, one of my friends goes up there and presents, the next year, some non-natives up there wrote a book and is saying the exact same thing that native said. And they wrote a book about it, and they're not giving back. So always, you know, give credit to where you're getting your information from, but include them. So if you have something and you want to get a Native voice and you present this information, you bring a Native person with you. Find that person, you know. And we're some of us can be divided too. You know, we've got colonization, and they've, you know, conquer and divide. So it may take you a while to find the right person in that Native community that really understands the struggle and is willing to do the work or support you in doing that work. So like I said, being patient is really, really important. How much time do we have? Yes, please, Stan.
Thank you for bringing that up about cultural appropriation versus appreciation. And classes at Kumeyaay Community College, we teach to everybody. And we work with other groups like the Birds Aquarium, Scripps Institute, University of San Diego, many different groups. We support each other. One of our projects is tule boat construction. The reason I brought that up is we launched 50 tule boats into the bay. There was a time when we only had one. But all of us working together, we built that first one. Now we have 70 boats. Next year we want to launch 100 boats out in the bay. And we let anybody who wants to go in there, you don't have to be Kumeyaay, you don't have to be Native, you can go in there and learn about our culture. However, there was this one guy, how can I say this nicely? He was blonde hair, blue-eyed, non-Kumeyaay. His name, don't cry, I wasn't picking on you, man. His name, well, we called him Kumeyaay Dave. Because when he learned it, he started to appropriate it. And he told everybody he knows more than the Indians on this. And he was farming himself out. Said he was the only one that knew how to do this. He said that. And I was standing right behind him listening. Total disrespect. Total disrespect to us, our culture, and the reason why he learned. So I just want to say, when we talk about learning from different cultures, to appreciate that culture. You can learn from it, but don't steal it. Don't take it. Learn, but don't steal. Okay? All right. Don't lie to me. All right?
Okay, so Waklao, thank you guys for all coming. And hopefully every seaweed festival we can have a native panel from different areas and we can share that information and support each other. So thank you again. Have a great day. I'm pretty excited about everything else going on. And yeah, eat kelp. Thank you.
Is a former Marine captain. Just want to say thank you for your service. No pressure, Jules. And working with the Birch Aquarium, we are going to make a tule boat that will hold 50 people. Does anybody want to help us to construct it? Come to us. All right, contact Nan. All right.